Did you ever moon someone or get mooned by someone? It was a big deal when I was in high school and in college as well. I certainly remember mooning happening. I never really understood it. It seemed like the person doing the mooning was doing the more embarrassing thing in a hopes of embarrassing someone else for seeing the moon. Yeah, I never really figured it out. This feels a little bit like that because I'm exposing myself to you because I need your help. My name's Scott, and for 30 plus years now, I've been serving students, particularly international, global students, in whatever capacity I could. After college and a short stint in the publishing world, I started working with refugees. After a few years doing that, I went into student ministry. And after a few years of doing that, I had the opportunity to take my dream job, to be the director of international student services at my alma mater, a place I truly believed in and knew could be a great place for students to go. And I was admissions and financial aid and student life for a couple hundred international students during my 10 years there. And it was amazing. What I have not exposed, because it was amazing, and I didn't want people to be distracted by how amazing it was. What I didn't expose was that during my time there, I was never full-time. I had a great position and I got to travel the country and speak at conferences and in colleges. I got to represent international student education in Washington, D.C. as part of a delegation, but the whole time I was not making a living wage. In fact, my wife had to work full time and she had to work in IT so that we could afford our rent and afford our house. And we were amazingly blessed. Then my heart broke again. Not for the students who were getting good service and were well cared for at my institution, but seeing hundreds and hundreds of international students at other colleges languishing broke my heart, and I couldn't not do anything about it. So I left my job and started Global Student Solutions with 12 amazing people. And we worked for a couple of years to try to figure out how we could serve those students. And we served several thousand students during those couple of years through online services, coaching, and even had some events that people gathered. And that was amazing. And it was a blessing. Growing up as a TCK myself, as somebody who grew up in Kenya, went to an international school, came to the US for college, to be able to give back in that way was amazing. But it wasn't lucrative. In fact, for those a couple years, I did that full time and never earned a salary. In fact, paid for the expenses of the business, a little bit of fundraising, and a whole lot of my wife working hard and footing the bill. I opted to go to graduate school because one of the things we identified as a need was that students needed better preparation before they traveled abroad for college. That they needed to know more and have it delivered in a easily digestible way. And I didn't know how to write curriculum, so I went to school and got a master's in education and curriculum design. Had some international schools testing that curriculum, and it was going well, and it was exciting, and we could see that we could reach students that way. But along the way, I encountered another need. A school in Indonesia needed my particular set of skills, and so we jumped. And within a few weeks of having a conversation with the superintendent there, we were on the ground in Indonesia. They couldn't pay us, but it was the right thing to do. And Dominic would get this great education at a great school, and I would get to pour into lives of students from more countries and more places in an amazing country of Indonesia. It was an extraordinary blessing to be able to be a part of that. For 7 years, I served as a guidance counselor and eventually as the secondary principal. We were able to do some really great things with some other great leaders, and it was a blessing to be part of it. It required some sacrifice, as good things do, and we spent all of our retirement in order to spend those years in Indonesia, banking on the hope that when we returned from Indonesia, we would be able to earn back our retirement and more. And it's kind of worked. Angie, my wife, is gifted and has done extraordinary work for companies who didn't appreciate her nearly as much as they should, but paid her fair most of the time. And we live frugally. And so she was able to get us out of that hole that years of service had created. And she was able to do it very quickly. I continued to follow these callings, and I went back to work for Global Student Solutions. We'd had this curriculum, and I had learned more things, and I had more experiences. I'd had the experience of growing international enrollment at colleges, and I heard colleges are really struggling, especially small liberal arts schools are really struggling getting students. And I knew, having been overseas and having been at universities in the US, that I could grow that. And so I said, well, let me be a consultant and let me help colleges. I also heard the need of students around the world for good information about college. And they needed more than they could get from their guidance counselor in their school and country. Now, some schools are amazing and have amazing guidance counselors. So I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the schools that have not been able to invest, are smaller, and don't have the money for professional guidance counseling services or skilled, experienced counselors, or those folks are just way too busy and they have way too many things on their plate and they can't give the time and energy to the students. And so my heart broke for them. And so I said, well, let me fill that gap if I can. And that's what I've been trying to do for the last 6 years. Along the way, I've had some great opportunities to meet some really great people and to continue to do some really good work and to have some amazing students. I worked with some amazing young women in Florida, and all along continue to research and learn and apply what I learn and try to figure out where do I fit into this new world and these new technologies. Um, I learned online programming and I learned videography and I learned how to do a podcast and started a podcast. I got my ideas down on paper and wrote 6 books. I continue to try to figure out how do I plug in, and the world's just saturated. Like, the internet is wonderful. And I can do everything online, and I can deliver a seminar on a high school campus in Indonesia live. That's amazing, right? It also means that we're just saturated. And for students to find me when they need me is proving impossible. And for colleges to find me when they don't even know to ask, because they don't realize that the 5.2 million students studying in English around the world at international schools who are college ready and have been paying big dollars for high school are struggling to get into colleges, and all these small liberal arts schools would be great fits. And they don't even know they exist, and the schools don't know those kids exist, and I'd like to put those things together. So in the process, trying to figure out how do we do this, and meeting with some amazing, generous people who taught me about marketing and talked to me about building social networks and talked to me about the amazing things already happening, and getting to interview them on the podcast about these just transformative things happening in education and the opportunities that are there. And I want to keep sharing those ideas. And I tried to do it alone. Really? I mean, that's what I tried to do. And a couple people helped me do it alone, which means I didn't do it alone. But I was thinking, I'm doing this alone. I can make this work. This is the exposure. This is where I moon everyone. The reality is I can't do it alone. I need your help. The opportunity exists. I have been able to develop an app. It is not ready to launch. It is underway. The framework is available to create the Global Student Connect app. I believe this is the thing that's missing. I believe that if students at smaller, mid-sized international schools could connect with each other and could connect to good services and could connect to these universities that want them desperately, need them desperately, and where it would be a fantastic fit and they could get a fantastic education at a value, a good value. I believe those come together through the Global Student Connections app. And a community for parents of global students, a community for global students themselves, both when they're in secondary school and then as they move into university, a place where students could earn an alternative supplemental transcript that would give them a competitive edge in higher education and getting into great schools, a platform for amazing seminars, webinars for each of these groups, a way for administrators at small international schools to have a peer group, which is, it's lonely out there in small schools, and they need a group, they need support, they need connections, and this platform can do all of those things. And it's right here, like I'm this close, but I can't do it without you. We got the last 3 feet. There's a story from the American Gold Rush about a guy from the East Coast who was a hard worker and wasn't getting ahead, and he risked everything. He took everything he had out to the West, and he purchased everything he needed to be a miner and to join the gold rush. And he bought his plot of land, and he dug his mine, and he dug and dug and dug and dug and never found gold. And he took the remnants of his tools back to the shopkeeper and said, "I failed, and here's my tools." And he walked away. And that shopkeeper took those tools and the deed to that mine, which he had purchased with enough so this person could head back east, I suppose. And he went out to the mine, and instead of scrapping those materials or selling them on to someone else, he went out and dug in the mine. And 3 feet later, he discovered gold. The young man was 3 feet away from riches, 3 feet away from his goal, from his dreams. And I feel like that's where we're at right now. I don't feel it. That is where we're at right now. We're 3 feet away. The initial launch of the app is at hand. It will happen in 2025 with your help. We will be able to have, I'm inviting you now, if you're a parent of an international student, of a global student, you can come on as founding members in that network. If you're an international student, if you're a global student, if you attend an international school outside the US, you can join the Global Student Connections app. You can join that network now and be among the first of this new thing. If you're in a small to mid-sized international school, you can be one of the founding schools in the Global Student Network and take all of the advantages that come with that at an unbelievably reasonable. I figured out how to do it. It doesn't have to be really expensive. It can be within budget, and you can provide the necessary resources to give your students a clear advantage, a truly valuable transcript beyond that silly piece of paper with some numbers on it. You can give them a portfolio that is rich and vibrant and really tells their story in a way that colleges will recognize. And colleges, you don't need to languish with too few students. You are a year away of competitive enrollment by embracing the students at international schools around the world. But all of that, telling that story, getting that word out, getting those initial colleges on board, getting those initial schools, founding schools on board, getting those initial students and families together, and getting this app out in the world and in the app store is 3 feet away. And I'd like to invite you to help me get through that last 3 feet. It's going to cost some money. It turns out these days it takes resources and takes expertise and it takes investment. And I can't do that alone. And I don't want to do it alone anymore. I want you to be a part of this amazing story. I've been blessed to be a part of some amazing student stories, and they've let me in and let me be a part of it. And I've been truly blessed by it. So I want to offer that to you too. So join us as we launch the Global Student Connect app and the amazing opportunity that comes through that platform. Whether you give a monthly gift, join us as a founding member, join us as a founder, as an investor, or simply just say, "Hey, I like what you're doing. Here's a couple cups of coffee. Keep up the hard work." Whatever you can do will make a huge difference, and you will help us close that last 3 feet. Thanks, and let's do this.